Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Crimson Crossover podcast presented by the Field of 68. I'm your host, Christian Sykes, joined by Charles Branch and Joey Blackwell, as always. How are you guys doing today?
Doing great, doing great. It's been a very action-packed past couple of weeks, which I know we're about to get into, but at the end of it all, coming out feeling pretty good about everything.
I was told we sleep in May, and I don't know if we've slept yet, to be honest.
Well,
Maybe sleep in June.
well, as you guys may know, we interviewed Preston Murphy in this podcast, and I don't think he's done much sleeping since the Final Four run. So maybe
Mhm.
he's sleeping in June, maybe he's sleeping now until June, because I do know that the high school and some of the transfer guys will come in June, and they'll probably install some stuff. But maybe like we said in the interview coming up, maybe he gets down to Orange Beach for a few days, gets some sun. And gets out of some buildings because he's probably been in some buildings the past couple of weeks with all the recruits and stuff he's brought in.
That honestly might be why he didn't, hop on video. He's probably already in his pajamas and has a nightcap and is just not he's ready. He's probably already asleep right now, even though we just finished the interview 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, he's probably like, I'm done. I'm gonna go turn on some cartoons maybe and kind of relax a little bit because I think this past week specifically has been probably taxing for him. So
You
um
mentioned him going to Orange Beach and all the Rising Tide videos. Can you imagine the content that he could put together in the ocean with Rising Tide videos out there? That'd be pretty phenomenal.
and again, we talked, and this is coming up, but we talked about it in the interview. I was like, man, don't let the fans and all the stuff that they were saying, throughout the week prevent you from doing what you were doing on social media, because those posts, like, I mean, when I'm talking about,
Gold.
I was waiting for those posts every single day. I was literally sitting there just on my phone waiting on Twitter until I get it. And the moment I get it, I just you go find the hidden Cliffords in the post, and it's like finding a hidden Mickey at Disney World or something for me. So, um, but yeah, no, we're excited about that. But yeah, in this podcast, we're going to talk to Preston about the recruiting in the transfer portal. Like, um, we brought in 8 guys. It's the best class in Alabama basketball history, as far as a recruiting ranking is concerned. You bring in 2 5-star guys, a top 30 guy, a top 50 guy, and Darren Reed, Aiden Shrell, Nos Cunningham, and the LeBaron Filan. And then on top of that, you bring in Houston Mallett, Chris Youngblood, Aiden Holloway, and then the new one that we got yesterday, which when this comes out, it'll be on Tuesday, which is Cliff Omori. I believe that's how you say his name. So in this podcast, we're going to be talking about that and our interview with Preston. So right now, this is the interview with Preston, and we'll get back to you guys after the interview. Enjoy. And we are joined by the one, the only Preston Murphy, the mastermind behind Alabama's #2 class so far at combined transfer and high school rankings for 2023-2024. Coach, how you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for taking the time. I know it's been a hectic couple of weeks for you as far as getting some guys from the portal, getting some high school guys, and um after the Final Four, I know that you probably haven't had much of a break. Hopefully now, with things kind of settling down, maybe you and the wife and can go on some vacations, maybe go down to Orange Beach or something like that.
No, that'll be nice. I hear Orange Beach is beautiful this time of year, so looking forward to some time down there.
Yeah. Well, Coach, like I mentioned, Alabama has the #2 overall class as far as combined transfer and high school rankings. And a lot of that could be attributed, one, to obviously Nate Oates and Ryan Pannone and Austin Clonch, but to you as well, because you're kind of touted on this roster as, or on this like staff as the recruiter, the guy that goes and builds the relationships with these guys. What what do you think you've brought to Alabama that's kind of made this to be like this successful class? I know you probably don't know this, or maybe you do. This is Alabama's highest ranked recruiting class in the history of the program. So what do you think you've brought to Alabama that's allowed you to kind of get that type of talent influx into the university?
Oh no, I did not realize that. I think firstly it's these young men want to come play for Nate Oates here, as he plays a unbelievable style. It's it's fast, it's upbeat. It's a mirror of the NBA, and it's an easy system to sell to these guys who have aspiration of playing on the next level. So coach has done a great job of building it down here at the University of Alabama, and it's an easy sell when you're working and selling a program like the one that he's built.
And then for you, this is your first year college wise coaching under and recruiting under this new NIL type of era, which as we've seen relative to first starting like the deals with agents and all of this, there's so much more relative than just going and getting guys as far as just recruiting them for fit and things like that. How has that been for you this year as far as, again, your first year in this new NIL modern college basketball era?
Yeah, it's been a little different, and it has some unique challenges. I think we've done a good job of identifying guys who want to play basketball on the next level, and guys that identify as basketball being the driver in their decision making. And we were fortunate enough to be able to recruit a collection of guys who feel that way, and we're very happy with the young men that we have coming in.
And then I kind of mentioned this before we started recording. Alabama has gone 4 for 4 on transfer guys that have, or committed after visiting. You know, you have young Chris Youngblood, you have Houston Mallett, you have Aiden Holloway, and then obviously another one that had recently committed. What do you guys do, or maybe not? You don't have to get into the weeds of things, but what do you feel like this staff does and what you do in order to, put a pitch out there that guys like to maybe not like to hear, but will listen to, and feel confident enough in the pitch to be able to commit, either on a visit or shortly after a visit?
Yeah, I think that I'm very genuine in the recruiting process. Building relationships on strong foundations. I believe the reason I have some success in recruiting is because I like being a basketball coach. You have to be kind of multifaceted, right? So like for me, like coaching, teaching, developing, I believe those things that I do a good job of kind of help me in the recruiting side of the job. So I think like not to be redundant, but the guys that I kind of went after are guys that are basketball first guys. They want to become better. They want to play on the next level, and they want to be challenged, and they want to be developed in a way that gives them the best opportunity to maximize their talents.
Charles?
Coach, you're coming off of Alabama's first ever Final Four appearance. You were already starting to bring in players during that run. You immediately start bringing in players. If you're not recruiting now, you're recruiting for the future. So I'm just curious yourself, have you been able to take a minute, a second, just to enjoy what y'all did last year as far as bringing Alabama to new heights? We just talked about off the floor with recruiting, but on the floor, going to the Final Four, has there been an opportunity to sit back and enjoy what y'all have done and your success?
Man, it's been such a whirlwind, from the Final Four playing so long. Like I believe we kind of were a little behind, I think, in the portal recruiting because we played like longer than other teams. So then once we finished, we had to kind of really kind of ratchet up a little bit so we can play catch up and kind of figure out who we want to go after, how they would fit in for us next year. So like it's been like a race that we've been on. So like just finishing up the class really yesterday. It's so I think now we'll have a time to kind of take a step back and enjoy the success that we had from this past season. But with that being said, I believe the success that we had from this past season allowed us to get the guys that we identified and to attract them to come play for us next year, so we can try to compete here for a conference and a national championship.
You know, speaking of the Final Four, I was curious. I feel like Coach Oates teams or Coach Oates staffs do such a good job of communicating together, working together on the sidelines. And then you get to the Final Four and he's up on the floor and the team's below the floor on the bench. I was just curious, did that create a new dynamic that y'all had to work through, or was it still pretty seamless as far as being able to work together as a team and relay messages as far as, you know, who should be on the floor, what sets you're trying to run, what defensive, you know, sets you're trying to get in to stop Connecticut's offense and things like that?
Yeah, I think that that it was definitely a challenge with him being on the stage, and it was so loud in there. So that was an additional challenge. But yeah, no, it created a little barrier. I think we had more extensive talks during the breaks, and so it wasn't as much talk as the games were actually going on as we normally would have with coach. But as the coaching staff, we stayed in constant communication and kind of streamlined the message. So during the breaks, we could get them our thoughts and our ideas.
So as the roster seems to start, you know, getting some answers, finalizing as you look towards the 24 and 2025 season, I'm curious as assistant coaches going through the off season, do you do some self scouting as far as the team set schemes that you ran last year? Do you look at conference opponents to see is to start preparing as what you're going to see in the conference play? Do you take time to look at things that were successful around college basketball as far as offense and defense? Who kind of heads up the scouting and how much time and effort do you put into that during the summer months?
Yeah, I think we'll break down into different projects for each of us as assistants. Um, we haven't decided or determined what the scouting is going to look like. I think for this upcoming year, last year, Austin and I kind of split up the scouts on the defensive side. He would have a game, I would have a game. Ryan and Coach Bowman would do the offensive side of the ball. So we haven't really sat down and went through those type of responsibilities yet for this year's for this season. And we obviously we with Austin leaving, coach hasn't filled that position just yet. So I think a lot will depend on who comes in and what their talents are. That when he decides to break it up and who has what falls under whose umbrella. But like for me personally, like I'm going through like our individual players from this past year, breaking down their shots, breaking down like the things that they did well, things they didn't do well, and kind of building out plans to help them to improve in this off season. And so that's one of the projects that I'm on right now, and really trying to help our guys continue their development while they're away from us.
So I know you've been part of college basketball for a long time as a player at Rhode Island in the mid 90s and obviously as an assistant coach, both playing for Coach Skinner when he was at Rhode Island and then coaching with him at Boston College. You also had Coach Herrick while he was at Rhode Island as well. I felt the block charge rule this year really opened it up for offenses, and you didn't have as many charges and obviously you didn't have as many blocks as far as defenders taking that risk. But with you being part of the game for so long, I was just curious your opinions. Are there rule changes? Are there administration things like going from 2 halves to 4 quarters that you would like to see to continue to move the game forward? Or do you think the game is good as it is right now?
Yeah, I think they're going to always make changes to kind of advance the game. And like for me, I love the way that college basketball is a little different from the NBA with the 2 halves, and you don't have the 4 quarters. And I know some people will like to see it go to that model. I think that's one of the things that make college basketball a little unique. So for me, for more nostalgic reasons, I would like for it to keep it the same, but I understand the reason to make it to go more towards the 4 quarters and the way that the game is played on different levels.
See, and we were talking about this again before we started recording, and you asked our thoughts on it. And I think the only real change that I would kind of have relative in the college game is do 6 fouls instead of 5 fouls. I think that would be the only thing that I would change, mainly because at times this season, and maybe you can talk on this a little bit, and this is kind of off the wall. You had situations where players like I think we talked a lot about like Grant Nelson, who would pick up like 2 easy or cheap fouls in a minute span, and then immediately that eliminates him from playing for 10 to 15 minutes, within a game, just because you can't, like, if it's in the first half, you pick up 2 fouls, you can't just put him out there, get 3 fouls in the first half. And, now you're kind of in a rough situation. So that would probably be the only thing that I would suggest, as far as maybe doing, is allowing a little more leeway as far as fouling is concerned, just because every conference, every referee coach, they call games differently. So it's really tough to kind of get a feel of what players are gonna, or how referees are gonna call a game.
They most certainly call games differently. That's that's a challenge in itself. I just and listen, the referees are human, and it's hard for those guys. Like every time they blow a whistle, someone's mad at them, right? If you blow a whistle, like the home team's mad, you blow a whistle, the away team's mad. So they have a very tough job. I do not envy them at all. But yeah, I think that would actually help the game. Adding that, maybe you know, it's a tough job those guys have.
How many? Another question, real fast. How many times have you prevented Nate Oates from getting a technical this season?
Listen, I think that sometimes we can almost make when he's going back with the referees, I think sometimes we can almost make it worse by all of us rushing up there and causing a commotion where he's kind of got it sort of under control. I think I think that, listen, he's a very passionate guy. He's great because he's fighting for his guys, and he doesn't like when we're getting like the short end of the stick. So like for me, I like to let him see him go a little bit, and make his point, because he's out there really in the fight with the guys.
If I could throw one rule change, I agree with the 6 going to 6 fouls. I think it allows more room for error with college basketball officials that we know could be calling 5 or 6 games in a week. And as you said, it varies from conference to conference. I think we saw it a lot this year with how many really good post players that we saw, and wondering what happened to 3 seconds in the lane. I'd like for them to just extend it to 5 seconds, but at least call it and not have this gray area of, is it 1 foot in? Oh, he's getting out of the lane. Just, you got 5 seconds to get out, and if you don't, to turn over. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that.
Well, I don't anticipate us having that lane problem this year.
No.
Yeah, it's that rule. Like we played against a couple of teams, and the guys in that paint. Like I think we counted as we went back, watched the game. A guy from a team that we played earlier, I won't say who, he's in the lane for 9 seconds, and like sometimes the way they officiate that is just not consistent.
I think we all know the team. Again, won't say any names, but I think we all know the team.
What makes it even worse is I think in that game we actually got a 3-second call against us.
So. We absolutely did.
So Joey, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I do have one. Coach, you talked about earlier about in the recruiting process, kind of one of the ingredients to the secret sauce is that you're genuine. And then you also talked about how Oates has a system that, players love to play in. And I was just curious as to your thoughts on when you have a product like Oates has, and, you're the person selling it. Does that make it, if you're since you like that system, does that make it easier to be genuine to the players? Does it make it an easier job for you to kind of have that pitch, since you're such a big fan of that process?
Yeah, I absolutely think it does. Like for me personally, I had opportunities to coach at different institutions, and some across the country. And like for me, as a coach, to be able to coach in the system under him, to be able to teach with our guys, to be able to recruit under this, I think this is the best way to play basketball. It's the way the NBA is playing. And you're playing for a guy that really believes in the guys that he brings in. So you'll see like unbelievable amounts of freedom, and I think that gives these guys the confidence to excel. So like it's a great formula that we have here, and I think it's proven to be successful by some of the guys that we brought in. You look at some of the guys that we brought out of the portal, like Chris Youngblood. He's he was the American Conference Player of the Year. He's 45% 3-point shooter last year. You look at Houston. He shot 50% last year on uncontested threes, and our guards here, like 80% of their threes are usually uncontested. Aiden Holloway, was a 3-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, and at Auburn last year, but in the EYBL where I coached against him, he's like a 70% finisher at the rim, probably the best shooting point guard in the country. Darian Reed, you move on to the high school guys. He's a 5-star kid, averaging over 1 point per possession this season, and just under 40% 3-point shooter. LeBaron, 41% 3-point shooter. I know it sounds a little redundant, but you see the type of talent and the guys that we're attracting. They all fit the style in which we're playing. So I think that when you look at the roster and the makeup of it, his style and what we're selling to these guys, it absolutely makes sense to them. And I believe that's why they're choosing to come play here at the University of Alabama. Oh, and shoot, pardon me, like freaking Aiden Sherrill, who's 6'11", Aiden Sherrill, who's 40% from the 3-point line in EYBL. And he's like, listen, he was a top 3 center in the country. I think for us, he was the number 1 center in the country. Like there isn't a high school center in the country that plays our style better than Aiden Sherrill. And then you look at Nas Cunningham, who was like a former number 1 player in the country, great athlete, great catch and shoot guy. So like you look at the guys and that we have coming in, they all are really skilled guys that fit how we play.
Well, and like I said, I was going to mention Aiden because I was like, you can't forget Aiden Sherrill. But on top of that, you have Latrell Wrightsville coming back, who was leading the SEC in 3-point shooting last year, and you have Grant Nelson, who as the season went along, you felt like he got more and more comfortable, and I really think that Grant has an opportunity, based off the people that you guys have brought in, to go back to a natural floor position, which is what I think he excels at, and you kind of saw that a little bit in the tournament this season. On top of that, you have a couple of draft potential guys that may or may not come back, that just depending on their grades, like this roster, and like I said, that like has a real opportunity to be a national championship caliber team. Do you guys feel like you guys have built something that you think can compete for a national championship? And do you like your chances?
We do. Listen, I think we do. We feel very confident of the roster we put together. We don't see a lot of holes. Like when you look at this roster from like size, length, athleticism, shooting, IQ, feel. We have 6 guys on the roster next season who shot 40% from 3 last year, and I think that obviously there's going to be a different. We have to gel. We have some work we have to do. We have to get guys to play together. We have to, we have work that we have to do. But from a sheer roster makeup, I think we covered a bunch of holes in creating this team.
And I have 2 more questions for you. Last year, a lot of talk was about the mudita of the team, right? The kind of coming together, the team mentality, and you really saw that like come to fruition in the NCAA tournament. What changed for this Alabama team in the NCAA tournament that just it really felt like, at least as a person watching this, as a third party, that like a switch was flipped, and like the intensity went up, the effort went up, all the things that coach was preaching all season just magically started happening. But what happened in the NCAA tournament that, or in preparation, that kind of brought the team to the level that I think that you guys thought it could be?
I think we got to give our guys a lot of credit. They really just came together, and they really covered for each other and had each other's backs. They sat down, they guarded, they followed the game plan to a T. They made the extra effort. They really talked, they communicated. Got to give those guys a heck of a lot of credit for just like kind of standing the ground, putting the flag in the ground and not backing down. I believe that that they really just they band together at the right time, and they did an excellent job of following our lead, and executing.
And the last question I have, it's a not a serious one, but a lot of our fans and a lot of the people that have been on Twitter have seen you become, I want to call you the Gump King when it comes to Alabama basketball. You know, as far as the interactions, the posts, the videos that you're posting, everything, like they're amazing. You know, what goes into that for you? Like, is it something that you're doing yourself? Do you have people doing it for you? And how do you come up with some of the ideas that we saw maybe in the last week or so, or beyond that?
Yeah, I listen. Let me say this: like our fans are great. Like we have a very passionate fan base. They're great, and like for me, it's really good to be able to interact with those guys. Like our fans, they spend their time coming to games. They spend their money supporting us, and I think it's good for me to be able to give back to them just interaction and kind of include them in some things. If I can. So I come up with some of these ideas and kind of get some help within our office to put them out there and kind of have fun with it, just engaging with our fans because they've been great supporting us and it's great to be able to engage and interact with them.
Are you going to bring the closer Roll Tide Willie in for some more deal closings?
that just happened. That literally just organically happened. That wasn't my plan. I didn't actually bring him in. He happened to be on campus, and I had an idea, and we kind of went with it.
I'll tell you this. I don't know if you know this, but that man, when you bring him as a closer, he's undefeated. He's gotten football recruits. Now he's gotten basketball recruits. You might need to use him a little bit more. I mean, but you guys are doing well without him. But I'm just saying.
Hey, we do have a open assistance job here. I mean, we'll talk to Oates about it, see if we can make that happen.
Coach, I am curious. You talked about the fan support for basketball, and obviously it should be there with Coach Oates, what Coach Oates has built over the past couple of years before you got here. But I'm just curious again, the guy that's you've played up in the Northeast where there's a lot of passionate basketball fans. You were at Creighton, where there's a lot of passionate basketball fans. Are you at all surprised that you have this much passion for Alabama basketball from fans?
Yeah, I think when you're on the outside looking in, you really don't know what to expect because Alabama has such a great name, a great brand, and obviously with the tradition and history of football here, that's what comes to I think outsiders' minds. But when you come down here and like you come to one of our games, you see the passion, you see the support, and it's just been incredible. So I've been very surprised by the way our fans have been pleasantly surprised. It's been incredible.
Well, and I'll say this for people that are, thinking about getting season tickets or going to games next year, if there's last year, obviously the team made a Final Four, but if there's a team that you want to go see, and there's a team that I'm saying you need to go see, it's next year's team because just from my perspective, this team has a chance to do something that Alabama's never done before, as long as everything meshes and gels together. And so go see them while you can because, I mean, you have 5 fifth years or 6 seniors on the roster next season or potentially 6, sorry, not guaranteed 6, potentially 6 seniors on the roster next year. And there's a chance that these guys can do something special just based off of what Coach Oates, Coach Murphy, and Pannone have done as far as building the roster for Alabama. So, Coach, I appreciate your time and I appreciate you joining us. I'm happy that you took some time out of. I know that your schedule's been crazy. Hopefully, it gets a little bit easier here, as I feel like you guys have done all you need to do as far as the transfer portal, and I'm looking forward to the 2025 recruiting class.
My schedule's going to get a lot easier these days, but yeah, no, I appreciate you guys having me on it. No, it's great, appreciate your support and all you guys do for the university.
Yeah, appreciate you. And Coach, please continue to post tweets because we can't not get enough of them. They're amazing.
Will do.
Oh, Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
And we just want to thank Coach Murphy to coming on. I mean, that was awesome. Just being able to sit down and kind of pick his brain on different recruiting that he does and what makes it so successful, because like we mentioned, and I don't think he realized that this is the best recruiting class that Alabama's ever had, and just being able to sit down and talk with him. And I know his schedule has been super busy and kind of cleared up a little bit after yesterday, but we're super thankful for Coach Murphy, and hopefully we can get him on here in the near future, leading up to either in the season or maybe after the season or during the season. So we really appreciate him. So guys, it's been what a month since we've talked last, and there's been so much roster turnover. I mean, you have Rylan Griffin entering the portal, Chris Parker, who we kind of expected, Davin Cosby, who we kind of expected, Sam Walters, Nick Pringle, Mohamed Wagi, all of these guys entering the portal. You have Jaron Stevenson going to the draft, Mark Sears going to the draft, and to the surprise of Joey Blackwell, Grant Nelson's coming back. So you know what that means.
Well, we still need to secure the NIL. We still need to do that. That's the last step.
So for you guys that don't remember, and for whatever reason, Joey decided, off when we weren't recording to remind both of us about a deal that he made on a prior podcast, which was, I think it was a Dreamland deal, I believe.
It was any barbecue white sauce deal. This is what I'm going to be wearing during that. I'm just about to protect myself.
He said
that
if we could get Grant Nelson to come back and we could get him a barbecue deal, with a local, whatever, a local barbecue joint.
No matter how big or small, it doesn't matter. I will just reiterate that.
Wait, Charles, don't you smoke meats? Can we consider that a barbecue deal? Barbecue NIL. Charles pays Grant $5.
Oh gosh, he does subscribe to Yale. He does pay Yale, Alabama, and he smokes meats. Oh gosh.
I got some ideas. I actually know somebody in the barbecue industry that's got a restaurant that there might need to be a conversation. So
this is becoming a reality. This is becoming a reality so much quicker than
it's going to happen. So basically, Joey said that if Grant came back and he got a barbecue NIL deal, that he would go sit in a baby pool and get poured white sauce all over him. So Grant Nelson's back. We got connections to a barbecue joint. All we need is Grant Nelson, and
it just writes itself at this point.
It does.
My internet fame will skyrocket after that among the Gumps. So and my personal pride will take a massive hit, but
well, so
not that there's any of that left.
Joey, I'll say this. If we do get this to happen, you have to shave everything and have just the stash.
Oh, that done. That would make it all worth it, because my wife won't let me grow a mustache, which is why I have this. So if she would be there recording it. She'd be the first to post it on social media. So I think she would take that sacrifice.
And also, Charles, we have to talk about you for a second.
Okay.
Where's your mustache?
I am clean shaven every day, trying to make it in the business world.
Yeah,
man.
So
I
am
don't
I.
have the dedication. I don't have the dedication for that, man, or the patience. If you want like acne and stuff all over and constant razor burn, then I would shave every day. But can't do that.
Sorry, I got to work man.
Like Preston Murphy, I try to be the closer.
The closer. But we getting back on track just a little bit. We can stay off track, but
now that you all have mental images of me in a kiddie pool covered in barbecue sauce, let's talk about basketball.
White sauce, white barbecue sauce.
Even I'm not sure if that makes it better, Christian.
I mean, I'm starting to think now, like, can we just talk, whoever it's got to be, at in the basketball department, it feels like a midnight madness countdown. We got Joey in the middle of the floor with the baby pool. We've got a countdown on the big screen. Grant comes out with his big tub of white barbecue sauce. I think we should give Nate Oates one too, or Coach Murphy, since
Murphy definitely.
Yeah,
oh, Murphy would do it. I think.
And as the clock strikes midnight and the season opens, we open with a bang.
And there's just a single spotlight on Joey in Coleman, and then there's smoke around it, and it's the final count.
Oh,
but with
I'll do an interpretive dance around the kiddie pool, like as
well, with it being in Coleman, and if there is, if we're bringing lights into it, Joey, you may luck out and the lights may not work and it may be completely dark in there. So
Oh, that's fair. That's fair. Nobody be there to see it. There'd just be sauce footprints away from the pool
Yep.
when the lights came back up. That's what they'd
I
see.
just thought of the best idea. We could get J&J to make barbecue sauce shirts for this.
Oh yes.
I might put that in a shadow box and have it hanging on the wall behind me.
And we'll make you, Joey.
Oh.
We'll do, you know how they change the coaches or whatever into elephants? We'll make you and one of the elephants with that, like the elephant head.
Oh
For
goodness!
all proceeds will go to Yale, Alabama. Think about it.
Don't. I hope Aaron Settles is listening to this podcast. That might happen. Oh,
Well,
goodness.
Aaron told me that he would join the podcast. So maybe it will. Maybe we need to run it by
gosh.
him.
All right, stay tuned, guys, for when Aaron comes on the podcast and Christian tells him about all of this.
Yep.
If you haven't tuned out already and or skipping forward for the basketball talk. Thank you for sticking around this long.
Yeah. So let's talk about it, guys. Let's actually talk about it. So Alabama brings in Aiden Holloway, Chris Youngblood, Houston Mallett, Cliff Amori. Additionally, they bring in LeBaron Filan, Nas Cunningham, Aiden Sherrill, and Darian Reed. It has a feel, as well as, Mo Diabate coming back, Wrightsville coming back, Grant Nelson coming back, potentially Jaron Stevenson and Mark Sears coming back. This roster has a feel of, for I think the first time under Nate Oates, that this team's deep enough and has the talent to win a national championship. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Well, this is the first year that it feels like they're reloading, not rebuilding in a way. Like when we kind of seen that in the past several years, but this year is the first year that it's 100%. They're not having to really replace anybody per se. Obviously, we're still waiting on potentially Mark Sears and his decision. But even if Sears decides to go to the NBA, which if he does go to the NBA, that means he got some good evaluations, and good luck to him. This team is just, the players that they brought in are awesome just amongst themselves. But then when you put them in the context of what they're contributing to the roster, they're very complementary. They, as Murphy just said, they fill in a lot of holes. One of the big things we've seen the past couple of years is, I won't say inexperience, but it's how young the roster's been. All of that is fixed with the guys that Alabama has coming back and the guys that they have coming in. I think you said, Christian, I think there's 6 seniors or grads. Yeah, potentially. Which is just insane. Not only that, but they add height and length, which is something that Alabama really missed this year. With Clifford, you bring in, people that were complaining, that were saying, oh, if only Bediako stuck around. All those people have to be quiet now, because you have Clifford and you have all this length that's being added. And Clifford's a prime example of what I just said about how complementary they are. By bringing Clifford in and having him play a 5, that allows Grant, which I know we talked about it for a little bit, that allows Grant to move over and play a true 4, which we saw throughout the year. When he was able to play a true 4, he was really good. Most recently, we saw him do that against North Carolina. We saw there were flashes of him playing a true 4. North Carolina didn't really have an answer for him when he was able to play that role. And if North Carolina, of all teams, is not able to have an answer for that, just imagine what he can do during the regular season. So, to avoid rambling, there's just a lot of excitement about this roster for a good reason. There's a reason it's the number 2 class in the country. There's a reason it's Alabama's best ever. It fits so well, and these players they're tailor-made for Nate Oates' system. That's why they went out and got them. And so, any excitement that you had for this season should be, is I believe absolutely warranted.
Alabama can win games in a multitude of ways next year, at least on paper from what we're seeing. If you go back 2 years ago with Brandon Miller and that team could outscore you, but it could also play really good defense. but the outscoring portion of that was typically going to be, you were going to have to get something from Brandon Miller every night. And I think that's part of what happened in the game against San Diego State is we didn't really get a whole lot from Miller. One, because of him being injured, but he just at that point didn't really have a supporting cast that could take it to the next level when he was not able to produce. Last year's team, even though Mark Sears went on an incredible run of however many 20-point games, it was constantly, you had 2, 3, 4 guys that were also getting in double digits and scoring with him. And of course, we struggled on the defensive side, just from a lack of either guys not knowing the defensive system we were trying to play, not having a rib protector when we were having guards trying to, getting beat and guys getting funneled to the rim, playing defense with our hands and not with our feet until we got to the NCAA tournament. Now, I think we've got a team that can beat teams from the outside, but I also think we have a team too that if we have a team, let's say it's Florida, what Todd Golden did against us last year, where they would not give us clean looks from the 3-point line. They would not help off on 3-point shooters. Now you can put guys like Cliff on the low block and let him go to work. I agree with Grant Nelson's going to get to play his more natural position at the 4, but I still think there's times where you could put Grant Nelson at the 5 and Stevenson at the 4 and throw a unique lineup out there that creates some positive mismatches for you and still put him on the block to score as well. So those games where teams just weren't going to help off, we've now got guys that can score on the block, but I also think a guy like Darian Reed or a Youngblood, but just with how they're built, they can do a better job of getting through the rim and finishing through contact like a guy like Brandon Miller did for us 2 years ago. Absolutely nothing against, Mark Sears or Aaron Estrada, but those guys are trying to score at the rim, when it being 6'1", 6'2", 6'3". Sears is obviously going to continue to do that, but he's going to have more chances to do that again because the floor is going to be more open because guys aren't going to be able to help off, and he's going to be matched up more against a guy that's his size than having to go against a big or something like that. So just the versatility with this roster, that it is a strong 2 deep at every position and 3 and 4 deep at some positions, just depending on how you rotate guys. You want to get minutes on this team, you got to go earn them in practice. You got to play defense. You got to not turn the ball over. Minutes are just not going to be handed out just to get you minutes, which I think is only going to make this team better going forward. And look, I've played around it with myself, just wondering how minutes would break down for guys. And I'm sure there's a lot of people, how's Nate Oates going to manage this roster and keep everybody happy? I don't think it's a Nate Oates problem. I think it's an individual problem that you show up with your hard hat every day. You do the dirty work. You play defense. You be, the 3 pillars of the program, max effort, continuous growth, selfless love. You play like that. That's how you earn minutes. So there's obviously a lot of work that's got to be done in the offseason as far as the pieces coming together, the guys playing for each other, like we saw with last year's team. But on paper, it looks like you've got everything now that you've always been looking for to kind of finish off what Nate Oates has wanted in his system and how he wants to play.
Yeah, and I'll say this: there, you're talking about lineup versatility. There's a situation, or there's a potential where you were talking about Jaron Reed, or not Jaron Reed. Jeez, Jaron Stevenson playing the 4, Nelson playing the 5. You could actually have a situation where you have Aiden Shrell play the 4. Yeah, he's got the shooting chops to be able to play it. I don't really know about his, lateral quickness and versatility there, but like there's so many different ways that you can do it. And, there's been a lot of talk in the off season about, who's going to be on the bottom of the minutes, who's going to not get like minutes. There's been talk of like Nas Cunningham not getting as many minutes, and maybe that's the case. Maybe it's not. Who knows? They haven't been on campus yet. They haven't gotten together. They haven't practiced. But if you're looking at it and you're saying Nas Cunningham, who's a top 50 recruit and the former #1 overall recruit in the class, isn't getting minutes, that tells you to the level of talent that this roster has. If you're saying like a Mo Diabate is not going to get minutes when he essentially won us the Grand Canyon game this past season, like that's the depth, the depth on paper of this team. And it's I don't envy the staff for having to make the roster decisions. I mean, I can guarantee you Nate's going to probably tell those guys like, "Hey, I'd love to play everyone 15 minutes a game if you're going to give me max effort for 15 minutes, and that's what I'm going to do. Everyone gets 15 minutes and that's it." Like I could see, I don't think that that's actually going to happen, but I'm saying like that's the type of thing that Nate would say, like, "Give me 15 minutes of hard effort and you'll play." Uh so I'm excited about it. I think the missing piece that we kind of talked about with Charles Bediako for this team was Cliff. I think that is the missing piece. The final, well, as long as Jaron and Mark come back, right? That's the final puzzle piece that you put the shooters together on paper. I think Coach Murphy said that they had 40% shooters last year that are on the roster this year. And in addition with that, you have a guy like Aiden Holloway, who was one of the best shooters in his class, obviously didn't perform as well, last year at Auburn. If he can kind of figure it out similar to how Javon Quinterly did when he came in over from Villanova, like you could potentially have 7-8 guys shoot 35+% from three. And then you have this all Big Ten defensive team big coming in that was third in block rate nationally last year. Went up against guys like Zach Edey and what's the guy's name from Ohio State that we played?
Felix Okpara,
yeah,
who I believe is now going to be at Tennessee.
Mm-hmm. And he was really good big. You had guys, I think Maryland had a few good bigs. And then
I think he probably played against Hunter Dickinson for at least a year or two when he was at Michigan.
Yep. Like it's not a guy that's not used to playing elite bigs, and it has done it extremely successfully. So the only thing I worry about with him is the conditioning and the pace. I don't think Rutgers was near the pace that we're going to play. So making sure that he's conditioned properly to be able to stay on the court, which I fully expect Henry to be able to do that with those guys this offseason. But sometimes the pace takes a little bit of time to get used to. We saw that with Grant Nelson this season. But yeah, there have been talks among the fan base that they're more excited about basketball than football this year, and it's not like oh, I'm more excited about basketball than football, like joking, like they're being completely serious. Like they want to fast forward to November. They want to get on the court and they want to see the team play. And that's coming with Kalen DeBoer being the first year head coach at Alabama. Like it's absurd. Like last night when we were doing the space, we had 90 people in a basketball space in May talking about, Alabama basketball. I mean, it's just, the levels are just crazy, man. It's crazy.
I'm really excited. And it's probably because he's a guy from the state, but Chris Youngblood, he's did very well at Kennesaw State, had a great year at South Florida. I'm very excited to watch him play at Alabama because I think he's going to bring a different type of leadership than what we've seen. We've obviously got leaders coming back, but from all accounts, it sounds like he's a little bit more local, and we've been very successful with guys in the state of Alabama coming and performing well. So, obviously to get somebody like Mark Sears back would be great, but Youngblood, Phylon, both those guys being from the state and kind of, again, similar to 4 years ago when you had Petty and Herb and Alex Reese, having those guys lead this team. I think that's something special too, that when you can have some guys from the state take Alabama basketball to new heights as well.
Joey, what are your thoughts on the Alabama I guess residents coming in and playing for Alabama?
Well, I mean, certainly worked out for Mark Sears. I mean, that maybe didn't work out for Mark Sears, worked out for Alabama with Mark Sears coming back. It's always good to have local guys come in, because obviously you want to see local talent, but you also have to think of it from a recruiting perspective as well. It makes it easier for you to recruit guys from your own backyard if you already have some of those guys in your backyard already playing for you, and not just playing for you, but doing well. During the first several years of Oates, we didn't really see as many, because he was hitting the portal so hard. We didn't really necessarily see a lot of homegrown talent that wasn't left over from Avery Johnson. Now we're starting to see them be able to go to the portal and be like, hey, you know what? Look at the system we've built here. Wouldn't that be fun? Oh, by the way, this is bringing you back to your home state. You can have your mama's cooking every now and again, and having that, it does so much more than make your basketball team better. It makes the recruiting game a lot easier for you. So there's multiple motivations behind bringing in the local guys. Darian Reed, is the highest rated recruit in Alabama's 24 class. He's in McDonald's All-American. We talked about, sorry, I'm blanking on Filan. He's from, Mobile. So you're kind of getting all of these places from all over the state. And then of course you have Sears already from I believe he's from Muscle Shoals, right? So Northwest Alabama. You're kind of getting all of your ground covered. Aiden Holloway, Sherrell. Sorry, yeah. He's another local guy, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I think he's from Georgia.
Sherrell, okay. I
think Reed and Sherrell are from Georgia.
Okay.
Sherrell does play at Prolific Prep out in California, but that's where
maybe that's where I knew he was from the California. I couldn't remember if he was from here or Georgia, but that's regardless, the point still stands of, bringing in these local guys makes it easy. It only makes your team better, but it also gives you the ability to recruit better, which that hasn't really been an issue so far. But being able to not only develop guys that are already here, but then bringing them back here, it works on two fronts there. This is just a really talented roster. We could talk about it all day, but yeah, like I said earlier, there's a reason to be excited right now.
Darian Reed and Aiden Sherrell are both from Georgia.
Okay. My apologies, guys.
But it's still local. Like Chris Youngblood was born in Tuscaloosa, but was from Georgia. Like Georgia's not that far of a drive. Like, but no, I'm really excited about LeBaron. I think he has an opportunity. I know a lot of people are writing him off, he's going to be behind potentially Mark, and he's going to be behind Aiden. I think that he provides a different dynamic than those two guys. I think I think I said this last night. He reminds me of Kyra Lewis a little bit as far as his speed, quickness, his kind of slashing ability. You saw that in the Iverson Classic when he played over the weekend. I think he had like 24 points. And he left the state he was from Mobile. And he left the state to go to Link Academy to get better. Link Academy is one of those like prolific prep type of schools that, they bring in the big recruits, and it's basically just a prep academy that, grooms, I don't know, like high school basketball players to make them 5 stars or, top recruits. And, looking at his recruitment, I believe, and I'm not 100% sure on this. Like, I know the guy wanted to come to Alabama. At a certain point, Alabama had, a couple of targets that they were kind of looking at over him, Boogie Flan, Jace Richardson, those guys, where he eventually commits to Auburn due to Wes Flanagan. I think that guy's a family friend who's now at Ole Miss. Once Flanagan left to go to Ole Miss, LeBaron decommits, then goes to Kansas, which no issues with going to Kansas, but I think he always wanted to be at Alabama. And when Alabama, is looking at potentially Mark Sears coming back, it's hard to convince a transfer guard to say, hey, come in and play, outside of like Aiden Holloway, but come in and play. But Mark Sears is most likely going to be back, right? But getting a guy that wants to be at Alabama, that wants to be in the system, that is a local person, that, his friends, I don't know if you guys have seen his Instagram lives, but like he's friends with Ryan Williams. He's friends with Mbakwe for the football. Like these local guys that are all going to be at Alabama. I feel like it just gives fans a little bit more juice, a little bit more pride rooting for them. Like I'm so excited to get him on campus just because he feels like one of those guys, like a Mark Sears or a Herb Jones or someone that could potentially be in or hopefully be in the program long term, and you know, kind of excel and be this like kind of local hero, I guess is what you would call it.
And can we go back? I just want to talk about something really quick that you said, and that was talking about, guys coming and be like, oh, well, they won't be still, they'll be playing behind so and so, and they'll be playing behind so and so. They can't start right away. I think that's just not a good mentality to have when it comes to college basketball. If you have guys that you're bringing in that are 4 and 5 stars that are not going to be starting, that's a good thing, because A, it shows their commitment to the program. They probably know they're not going to be starting. B, it shows how good of a roster you already have, because you have guys to be playing that are going to be playing. And then on top of all that, if you have guys that are 4 and 5 stars that aren't going to be starting, it adds depth. And depth is such an important thing that Alabama had a decent depth last year, but there were a couple of positions, Mark Sears, for example, having to play daggum 38 minutes a game, Grant Nelson being forced to play the 5 most games. You had those issues, and bringing in guys that aren't going to start, that's actually a good thing. And I think with Alabama fans, a lot of times that gets lost because a lot of fans that are new to basketball, if you're watching a lot of football, you want to recruit freshmen that are going to start right away. You want those immediate impact guys. And if you're not, well, you're probably a 2 or a 3 star, which there's nothing wrong with that. But that's what Alabama fans are conditioned to think. That doesn't apply to basketball. It's good to have guys. If you have 4 and 5 stars that aren't going to start, that actually means your team's better off than you think they are. So I would just like to kind of say that really quick, because Christian, the way you said that, it kind of just lit a fire under me, not because of you, but because of seeing that on social media so many times. Nate Oates and Preston and all those guys, they're going after these guys for a reason. They're filling in holes. They're not expecting all 5, 4 or 5 guys they get every year to be immediate starters. That's not how basketball works to that extent.
There's only 5 positions.
I'll get off my soapbox now.
There's only 5 players on a court in basketball, and a lot of people, they were at one point. I think the thought was that Muhammad Wagi wasn't going to transfer, and I was all for him not transferring, not because I thought that there would be a situation. And I love Wagi, and I appreciate him being part of the Alabama program. I wish him well going forward with whatever school he chooses. But like, you can't go and recruit every single player, and every single player is going to be a starter. That's not how it works. Like, you have to have guys that are going to be depth pieces. You got to have guys that are, someone has to be the 13th, the 12th, the 11th guy on the bench, right? Like,
and also sometimes you just got to have the glue guys. You got to have guys that are going to, yes, they might not make as big of an impact on the court as you would like, but they're great off the bench. They're great at building that camaraderie and that team that you want. I think that also gets lost a good bit too.
And so I'm saying that to say, like, there was people questioning Aiden Holloway, the signing of Aiden Holloway. Aiden Holloway is a guy that wants to be at Alabama because he wants to get better. That's the prototypical guy that Nate Oates wants, right? A guy that has an ability to shoot and score, and that's coming to Alabama knowing the situation at the guard position because he wants to improve. And he has a real opportunity here to, maybe not this season be the guy, but next season be the guy, right? Mark Sears doesn't have any eligibility left. What better way to learn than to sit behind Mark Sears, who, if he does come back, is a top 5 guard in the country, maybe the best guard in the country. A Wooden Award finalist, a second team All-American. Why not sit behind him? Why not go against him every day in practice and, get better? You have guys like, people were concerned about Jaren Stevenson transferring because Grant Nelson was coming back. Why would Jaren Stevenson transfer when you can go play against Grant Nelson every single day in practice, go compete against the best players every single day in practice? People were concerned, if we go get Cliff, is Aiden Sherrill going to transfer? Why would Aiden Sherrill transfer when he gets to play against a Big Ten all defensive team big every single day in practice, right? Like these guys aren't scared of competition. That if they were scared of competition, they would have, got out of their NLI. They would have not come to Alabama. These guys are at Alabama because they think this is the best place for them to get, talent, or for them to improve their talent, improve their draft stock, and it's the best chance for them, they think, to win a national championship, which I kind of agree with, but that's neither here nor there.
I think that's a good point as far as like using Jaron Stevenson for an example. What system out there in college basketball, and I'm sure there's a handful that I'm just not thinking of right now, but what system out there gets him ready for the NBA, like Alabama's going to get him ready for the NBA, and like it got Noah Clowney ready for the NBA? I mean, that's what Coach Murphy kind of talked about in our interview. Yeah, it's a fun style, but it's getting you ready to go play for the NBA. Just thinking about, the roster makeup, and you look at last year, even if you were quote unquote the 10th or 11th guy on the roster, like a Davin Cosby or a Muhammad Diabate, you had some big moments last year. Cosby against Ole Miss, Diabate, of course, against Grand Canyon, and there were some other, games that Diabate had some big moments, collectively that other guys stepped into as well. Sam Walters in his game against Florida and against Arkansas in the overtime. I think about the year before that, Dom Welch, if he doesn't hit those 2 threes in the first half against Mississippi State at home, it's a game we might have ended up losing. So no matter where you are, 1 through 13, considered as far as playing time, talent level, whatever it is, we typically haven't been all the way to 13 because we haven't had a full roster. We haven't used all the scholarships. Somebody's been hurt, something like that. But there will be opportunities will find you to step up and to make plays for this team. And you got to do the work and be ready and to take care of those moments. I mean, that's what that team 2 years ago was so good about as well. You had freshman Rylan Griffin hitting big shots. You had Namari Burnett at times hitting big shots. You had Jaden Bradley on the floor when we were at Houston for that comeback. So, don't let the outside noises, factor how you play or how you practice. If you focus on the team goals, your individual, I think, goals will come through that, whether it's this year or whether it's getting you ready for next year too, to lead what I expect would be another really good Alabama team if certain guys come back.
Yeah, and one thing I do want to talk about is the kind of the guys that Nate has been targeting, since the Brandon Miller year. So the past two recruiting classes as far as transfers are concerned. When Brandon came in, there was a very big emphasis on bringing in freshmen, bringing in, guys that get developed and stay in the system for a few years. I think of like Jaden Bradley, Rylan Griffin, like though Noah Clowney was supposed to be one of those guys, but obviously he went to the NBA. Charles Bediako is another one of those, like the guys that you kind of expect to be in the Alabama system for a few years. And then at that point they go into the NBA. After the San Diego State game, where San Diego State basically had a roster of 9-10 super seniors or juniors, and Alabama basically got bullied, as far as physicality is concerned, because they were freshman guys playing against grown men. You've seen a shift as far as kind of the guys that Nate Oates and now Preston Murphy are kind of targeting, with like Aaron Estrada, Latrell Wrightsell, Grant Nelson. This year you have obviously Aiden Holloway's kind of an exception, but you have Chris Youngblood, Houston Mallett, Cliff Amori, like these guys that are coming in that are 5th-year guys that have a lot of college basketball experience under their belt that probably don't need the same type of coaching that a freshman would, right? Like you're not having to preach to Cliff about how to defend something because he's probably seen it, in his 4 years. You're not having to, talk to Chris Youngblood about how to attack a certain defensive coverage, because he's probably seen it. I mean, he's the AAC co-player of the year last year. So it's definitely an interesting way that the staff is going about recruiting, where they're bringing in like 3 or 4 elite type of level of freshmen that I think that the hope there is that they maybe stick around or they get drafted one and done. And if they don't, then it's another spot open to either go get another transfer or the following year go get another elite talent. And I kind of like it, because I feel like for Alabama, like for them to be successful, I think experience wins in March, and I think seniority, I guess is what I would say, wins in March. And I feel like 2 years ago, that's what hurt us in the Sweet 16. And last year was probably the first year outside of the Herb Jones year that you had an experienced Nate Oates team, and you saw what happened. They went to the Final Four. So hopefully that trend continues this year with Alabama going into the season. So let's see, what else can we talk about? You want to talk about expectations?
Before we get to expectations, one thing that I wanted to bring up with the in-state talent guys. This was something I don't think we talked about, but was maybe talked about coming off the Final Four. Just the year Mark Sears had, should his jersey be retired at Alabama? I'll ask y'all's opinion about that, but before asking that, I'll give my opinion. I know Wendell Hudson's jersey is in the rafters. I feel like 20 is supposed to be retired throughout the entire athletic complex, as far as nobody can wear 20 on any athletic team. I don't think Mark Sears' jersey should be retired. I think the number 1 jersey should have a special patch on it, because that's also the same number Herb Jones wore. I think going back to the early 2000s, that's what Chuck Davis wore. And I'm sure there's a bunch of other Alabama players that, also wore number 1 from the state of Alabama that, did very, very well. I think Riley Norris, was also a guy from Alabama who wore number 1. So my opinion is, don't retire the jersey, just make it a special jersey for in-state players to wear, and commemorate that with a special patch on it or something like that.
I'm not one for jersey retirements. I think like I understand the gesture, but it's just a number, I do like the idea of allowing in-state Alabama players to have that number 1, or better yet, because some guys, the number means a lot to them for whatever reason. Some guys want 22, some guys want 11 or whatever. I think it would be cool, and I don't know if they could, but just to do the jersey patch in general for Alabama in-state Alabama players. I feel like that would be a really cool gesture because in the era of NIL and transfer portal and all of this, last year we only had 1 guy from Alabama, right? But to be able to show pride within the, within the state, pride for the university, things like that, having a type of Alabama patch would be kind of cool. Maybe not necessarily on the 1. And I understand the thought process, but with so many players, some players just might not want the 1, but are still might be impactful from an Alabama standpoint. But having that type of jersey or jersey patch would be kind of cool, in my opinion.
It wouldn't be hard to make a little crimson state of Alabama and just put it right above the name and the back of the neck. That wouldn't be a hard thing to do at all. Yeah, I'm kind of in Christian's camp. Football is one thing when it comes to jersey retirements, because there's just, there's numbers for more specific positions, and there's so many players and so many different numbers. Obviously you still have the 99 numbers for basketball too, technically 100 if you count 0, right? Because 0 can be used now. But I've always been kind of against jersey numbers. I mean, if you'll get a court named after you, or something like that. You'll get a statue outside of the arena of you. But I do really like the patch idea. I think commemorating in-state players. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It just makes it even more special. And it's just another thing to help, kind of build up the program. So while retiring jerseys numbers might be a little much, I do like that. But then again, the precedent's kind of been set with Wendell Hudson. So, retiring jerseys is not out of the question. Now, if Mark Sears comes back and Alabama wins a national championship and he's once again playing 35 minutes a game, I might be more inclined to say it. But no, I get the sentiment behind it though.
No, if we win a national championship, build Mark Sears' statue.
Yeah.
Actually, that is a question I want to ask you guys. If Alabama wins a national championship at basketball, do you think they build Nate Oates a statue?
I mean, they built Nick Saban one after he won his first national title at Alabama. So why wouldn't they build one for Oates?
Because they didn't.
But then if you do that though,
Murphy.
you got to build one for Murph, and then you got to build one for Jenny Mines for tennis, and Sewell and all them. But hey, they should do a Sewell. They should do a Sewell statue. That'd actually be awesome. Hold it till the new arena, and then you have a Patterson statue and an Oates statue like outside. That'd be pretty sick. I'm not gonna lie.
Like, because someone's asked me that, like, if you win a national championship at basketball, do they build Nate a statue? If so, where are they going to put the statue? Like, if they build one,
I don't think they would, just because there's already the Sarah Patterson Champions Wall, which is where they put any sport that's not Alabama. And as much as we all know that basketball is the number 2 sport at Alabama, but I think if you build Oates a statue, then that's kind of disrespectful to all the coaches of the other programs that have won championships. But I might be one of the only ones that sees it that way. But I'd also love to see a Nate Oates statue. So, and a statue of me jumping in front of a bus to protect him right in front of it. So,
that left, as you're walking up to Coleman from the parking lot, that left side, I think it's just kind of like a grassy knoll over there. That's, you could probably do something like that. That again, it wouldn't just be Nate Oates, since it's Coleman Coliseum, and since gymnastics is also held there and they've had a national championship. I think you could do an unveiling of Nate Oates and Sarah Patterson at the same time, if you were going to start doing that, because I'm of the opinion, and I think, is it Ashley Johnson who's our coach now? I apologize if I've got the wrong name for our gymnastics coach, but that's still a program that performs at a high level, that's going to continue to compete for national championships. So I don't think it's something that, just like football, you do and you feel like you're ever going to be done with. There's still going to be opportunities to add to that. So maybe you build some type of cool plaza right there that's really more tied to Coleman Coliseum. Obviously, Murph and Sewell and Mick and all those guys deserve their own recognition too at some point around campus, whether it's a statue or whether it is just the Champions Plaza. But that's a way I could see it, as far as you've got a space right there in Coleman that it's not really used right there out front. That could be a cool spot to do something.
Well, also, I mean, building, if the new arena, whenever it's built, is built where we all believe it's going to be built, where the plans had it up, there's a lot of potential for a lot of the land around there. So it wouldn't be hard to, build a park there with statues where you'd have enough room to put all the current and former coaches that have won championships there. I mean, there's a lot of potential. You don't have to, put it in, over there by Coleman if you're building the new arena. I think that, I mean, shoot, if I had my way, if you're looking at Bryant-Denny, you have all the football coaches. Why not have the other side be all the coaches of other sports? But I know that would be highly controversial. It's the Walk of Champions. It doesn't say the Walk of Football Champions. It's the Walk of Champions. So why not put them there? But I know that's probably a hot take that'll probably get me canceled. But
well,
give credit where credit's due. Dang it.
Well, I'll say this, as far as and I don't know how we got to arena talk, but I'll address it.
I brought it up first. My apologies.
I wouldn't be surprised if we don't build the arena.
Yeah, that's fair.
Meaning not in a bad way. If you guys haven't been paying attention over the last month or so, Alabama announced that they're going to build a new facility for Alabama basketball. And from my understanding, that's a men's basketball only facility, with new offices, new weight rooms, new gym, building off of Coleman. And I think they said it was going into the parking lot. So I would presume that it would probably be, where the media entrance is. I would presume it'd probably be built off of that back piece back there.
That's already the practice gym back there. It's what
Yeah.
that area is. Yeah.
And the women's team is going to get the men's facility, which and I know the men's facilities are top notch in the SEC. Like for women's, I guarantee you that's probably the best facility in the SEC for women's basketball easily. With that being done, and I think that's going to be going to board approval in June. I think it already got preliminary approval, but like for like complete, hey, let's get this going. I think that's going to be in June, but I could see them saying, hey, we got this new facility. Let's renovate Coleman completely. Like just we'll redo everything and then use the additional money for NIL. I could easily see that being a thing. Instead of building a new arena.
My only caveat to that, since we had our segment in there, is you cannot take away the Hangar of Doom feel, because that's obviously been successful ever since Coach Oates has been there. And there's probably some NIL opportunities off of that too, as far as guys taking flight in the Hangar of Doom. But I agree. I think there's an opportunity to renovate Coleman, get it down to the seating that you want it to. And two, I don't know if this is ever really discussed when you're talking about a new arena, but ticket prices to get season tickets are going to go through the roof and could price out for a lot of fans that have cared about this program for a long time. So, again, I think if there's a solution to renovate it and maybe bring it more up to speed as far as what college basketball is now, and even with reducing capacity, will increase ticket prices. As long as you're not 10xing it, then I think fans will be able to find ways to stomach it, find ways to still get to games, and it won't just be something that you got corporations or entities that have tickets and they're distributing them to people who want to go or are able to go for that particular game.
Well, you also have so much room to work with in Coleman because of the layout that it's had. You have so much room to work with. And I was actually talking with somebody the other day about potentially renovating the stadium, and they were talking about just how the layout didn't work. I'm like, if you want a great example of turning an old arena into new, and like I look over at the pavilion at Ole Miss and what they were able to do with that arena. I don't know if anybody's ever been to the pavilion, but 10, 15 years or so ago, it was not exactly a premier place to go in the SEC as far as amenities are concerned. But now, if you go now, it feels like a miniature NBA arena. It has an upper deck. Like this, the way that it's structured, it fits so well that if you walk into that space, you never would have known how it used to be. And so I think that you can apply that same thing to Coleman. And just because it's in a building that's however years old it is now, that doesn't mean that it can't have that new feel if you slap a coat of paint and do some, restructure some of the elements of it. The outside is beautiful. I don't know. I know a lot of people don't like you said, the Hangar of Doom, the arch on it, but it's gotten iconic at this point. So why not keep it the way it is and just, spruce it up a little bit?
Yep.
And I wish we could have put those t-shirts together. I guess the university said no, but man, the Hangar of Doom t-shirts would have been sick, but maybe it's something that we kind of address.
Well, we're not going anywhere, so maybe we just keep, dripping.
They can't ignore us forever.
They can't hold us down. But getting back to the team and the kind of off-season talk, we do this in all the podcasts, or not mainly in the podcast, but in like all the spaces and things like that. Just because I like to get a gauge on kind of what people are feeling as far as the season. And then it's also fun to kind of reminisce on like going into SEC play last year. I think we said 13-5 was the goal, and I think did we end up getting 13-5? And we said we were happy about that, and I like to do that because I like for people to kind of remember that, like, this is what you said back in January, and for when things go wrong, which things, when good things happen, everyone knows the saying.
This is Alabama basketball.
This is
When
Alabama
good things
basketball.
happen, you ultimately eat Arby's.
Yeah, exactly. Which, by the way, I love Nick's lead into his article, which I think he said something like, "You don't need to eat Arby's" or something like that. That was
I actually
amazing.
have that story pulled up. Let me find it.
Which, by the way, him coming off of his honeymoon and just dropping a banger like that, first story out is quite impressive. Also,
yeah,
congratulations to Mr. and Mrs. Kelly, I will say.
He said, if you're waiting to go back to Arby's until bad to mediocre basketball returns to Tuscaloosa, you might be waiting a while. Good basketball isn't going anywhere, it appears. In fact, elite basketball isn't so much a flavor of the day in Tuscaloosa as it is becoming more and more a staple on the menu.
What a banger. But yeah, shout out to Mr. and Mrs. Miss Kelly. I also, Nick, I'm gonna say, if you're listening to this, I'm very disappointed you didn't give me Cliff News while on your honeymoon, because I asked for it.
Oh goodness.
But what was I talking about? Now I'm like
expectations.
Yeah. And so I like to look at those, because when fans, like we had this past season where they were disappointed at the end of the season and things like that. And, I like to call, we're level setting, because I don't want people to get their hopes up and then get disappointed when, I think, Charles, you say it best, just get to the tournament, give yourself an opportunity. Which I know that's what you're going to say when I ask you this question, but what are your guys' expectations with the roster as we know now? I know we don't have a schedule, but just overall, let's just say regular season record expectations and maybe goals or achievable goals come the NCAA tournament.
Charles, you want to go first? You want me to handle it?
I'll go first, since mine's, copy and paste, I guess. Yeah, my goal will continue to be make the NCAA tournament. Yeah, I could put out there that I think this team should be at no worse than a 4 seed in any region. But again, just make the NCAA tournament. We know what the talent level is on this team. Maybe it is a situation that it takes them a little bit to figure things out, and they come out strong in conference play, kind of like how last year's team did, and gets in the 4 or 5 range. But I think from an NCAA tournament perspective, just make it, like you said, give yourself an opportunity, let March play out in front of you. I will say, on the SEC side of things, that my expectation is for this team to be a top 4 team, to get a double bye in the SEC tournament. And the only caveat I put into that is, of course, last year you had 4 teams tie in second place. So South Carolina ended up not getting a double bye with the 5th seed. So I expect us to be a top 4 team in the SEC. Yes, I expect the double bye, but always leaving the caveat that you could have some crazy tiebreakers or something like that happen. But as far as standings, rankings, seeding, that would be my initial expectations for this team.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you on the top 4 in the SEC. I don't know about winning the regular season title. Obviously, that's always the hope. But I think if you're finished top 4, you get that double bye. I mean, you're going to be a good tournament team when it comes to March. I think this team really jumped over a hump, not just making it to the Final Four, but making it past the Sweet 16. And so I think now, instead of Sweet 16 or bust, this Alabama team can now focus on Elite 8 should be, I mean, obviously the goal is to win a national championship, but if we're talking about realistic goals here, I think Elite 8 is not something to really, it's not as unimaginable as it was even last year. I think this team can win. See what we're 25-12 this past year. I think they can win a couple of more games. I can see them winning 27, even maybe like a 27-10. 27. They could go 28 and 9.
29 and 10. 29 and 10.
Sorry, 29 and 10.
That's a national championship right there.
I'm thinking a pre-tournament, right? Isn't that what it is? Or
it's 31 pre-tournament, and then you'll have 3 in the SEC if you get a double bye.
That's what I get for looking at full season records instead of regular season. But yeah, I still think they could win 24 in regular season. They could probably win 25 games, 24 games. Once again, we don't know the schedule. They're going to lose 3-4 SEC games. But that's just goes to show how competitive the conference is getting. And how top, but I think this year, we've seen so many transfers and things line up. It's going to be an even tougher conference than it was last year, and we had a 4-way tie for second last year. So overall expectations are high. I think this team can make an Elite Eight. It's just a matter of what can they prove past that. And I think this team has what it takes to get to that level. Absolutely, it does. But like you said, you never know. You gotta take the good with the bad sometimes. This is Alabama basketball. So I think that really the sky's the limit. It's just a matter of how things play out.
Look, I'll say this, and I'm generally the pessimist out of the three of us. I think it's either me or Joey. One of us is always a pessimist.
I'm not a pessimist. I'm realistic.
That's what I like to say too. But more often than not, it's the bad end of the stick than the good end of the stick. So, realistically, on paper, this team is a national championship caliber team. Like 3rd or 4th best odds, I think 5th best odds at worst to win the national championship. If Mark Sears comes back, if Jaren Stevenson comes back, if the roster is set like with the way we think it will be, on paper, that's not the expectation. Because I think if you have national championship expectations, more often than not, you're going to get hurt. Because when you get to a tournament, that's a single elimination and you have to win 6 games in a row. It's hard. It's hard to do. It's 3 straight weeks of 2 games against high level elite competition, and the competition only gets more difficult as the tournament goes on, because you're either facing a really hot.
Just look at the season before last. The number 1 overall seed. You should technically be the best team in the country. And Alabama probably was the best team in the country at that time, but they still lost in the Sweet 16. Like, anything can happen. It's hard.
Well, and in that same season, you have Purdue, who's I think was the number 2 overall seed, loses to the 16, a 16 seed. Like, that's why I don't like to put hopes and kind of expectations on the NCAA tournament, because all it takes is one team either being really hot or your team being really cold to lose. Like, it's not one of those things that, oh, the best team is always going to win. It's the best team on that given day is going to win. And in basketball, it's so volatile that can be either team on the other side of the court. So, I think floor for this team is Sweet 16. Like, being completely realistic, looking at the roster construction, like, I think that this team should be able to get to the Sweet 16 pretty easily. Again, if everything gels together, everything works together, there's no, long-term injuries, different things like that can derail a season. But more importantly, I think that this is a team that can compete for another SEC regular season championship, which I think is the hardest championship to win out of the 3, between the SEC tournament, the national championship, and then the regular season, because you have to win a certain amount of games.
I know a lot of Auburn fans that would agree with you.
For a regular season?
Oh, no, sorry. I thought you were talking about the tournament, SEC tournament. My bad.
No, the SEC tournament, I think, is the easiest of the 3 to win. Realistically, I think that's the easiest. But regular season tournaments or regular season championships, I think, is the hardest, because it's the best team over 18 games. It's not the best team over 3 games or 4 games. It's not the best team over 6 games. It's the best team over 18 games across 3 months. And so I think that this team, when you're looking at the SEC, is the best team on paper in the SEC. And I don't think that that's a hot take. Now, does it gel? Does everything come together? Are there injuries? Who knows? But on paper, this is the best team in the SEC. And I don't think that a top 4 bye is unrealistic and should not be an expectation. But I also think that a top 4 seed and a double bye should be the expectation every year, because that's the expectation that Nate Oates has put out almost every single year.
When you talk about just real quick, because we can dissect this later on as we get closer to the season, but Texas and Oklahoma obviously are coming into the SEC. SEC schedule will look a lot different than what we're used to, as far as not as many repeat opponents. I'm just curious, real quick, do you think Texas or Oklahoma have an advantage in their first year, or a disadvantage in their first year playing new conference opponents?
I think they have an advantage, because Texas and Oklahoma played in the Big 12, and the Big 12 is the best basketball conference in the country. I'm not saying that Alabama's not, or the SEC isn't a good basketball conference, but when you have Houston, you have Kansas State that's done well, you have Baylor, you have Kansas, like all of these schools that are Iowa State last season, who won the Big 12, like all of these schools are so good at basketball that, like, again, not saying that the SEC isn't good, but it's a different level in the Big 12. And now Big 12 is going to have Arizona come in. Like that, BYU's going to the Big 12, or BYU was at the Big 12 last year. Like the level of competition, and I think that they'll have an advantage solely because I think that their conference level of competition decreases. And so maybe those stabs have better idea of how to prepare for games, and the players have played those tougher type of teams day in and day out to where maybe they'll have a little bit more of an advantage. Joey?
No, I'm sorry. No, I'm good. I don't really have any remark. I do think I just had the same thoughts as you. I didn't really want to repeat. That's why I didn't jump to say anything. I think they do have an advantage because of just the talent level they have in the Big 12, and that's not discounting the SEC at all. I think the Big 12 is a storied conference for a reason. Is because you have so much top tier talent there. So sorry, I was quiet because I didn't want to go through and repeat everything, because I pretty much agree. So
well, also we've been recording for a long time, and this is
it's true. Yeah. It's past,
all right.
It's past my dinner time.
It's like 9:15.
I haven't eaten dinner yet. I'm starving.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Well,
The new Christian Sykes.
Yeah. Well, I ate, but I was eating while Murphy was on. So, but with that, we'll let Joey go eat. And then Charles will probably have to go to the bathroom, so we'll let him go to the. But with that, I think we're good to sign off, and hopefully I can get this out tonight. And if not, then it'll be in the morning for you guys. But just to schedule, we'll have some sporadic podcasts depending on guests that we can get on. We talked about Aaron Suttles potentially. Maybe we'll get Nate Oates on, depending on his schedule. I really want to try to get Adam Ballman on, and maybe Ryan Pannone, or the new head coach, some of the players as well as throughout the off season, just kind of give you guys some content that's a little bit different than what we normally do throughout the season, just because I don't like to bother the coaches and I don't like to bother the players during the season, because that's winning time for them. So be on the lookout for that. Be on our social media at Crimson X Over. Follow me, or don't follow me. Sorry, please don't follow me. I was gonna say follow me, but don't follow me.
Freudian slip there.
Yeah, sorry. But it'll be on my account or the Crimson Crossover account, or Charles or Joey. We'll try to keep content out throughout the off season, and with that, I think we're good to sign off and roll Tide.
Well, check out our other shows too.
Shoot, I'm so sorry. Mulligan's
J&J Apparel.
J&J. First of all, shop J&J. The Final Four shirt. I got the pullover, and Charles has got the pullover. We got some more stuff coming out. And then additionally, we have Mulligans and Milkshakes, which is our golf podcast that we started with myself, Charles, and Matthew Travis, where we talk about PGA Tour, we talk about the LPGA Tour from time to time, and then a big focus for us is the collegiate game. Focusing on Alabama men's and women's golf. I think we have an episode coming out here this week about the Wells Fargo and the two NCAA tournament game, or I guess rounds or whatever, however you want to, matches with the women's team this week and then the men's team next week. So look out for that. And then additionally, we have the Weekly Joe with Paul Graham, Hunter Johnson, Roger Patrick Myers, Megan Dennis, Drew Champlin, Griffin Smith, and
I think you got everybody.
I think that's it. Yeah. And they do our baseball. They've been doing spaces similar to how we did spaces for basketball, and saw an opportunity there for them to kind of expand their audience and really do something good with the baseball community. So check that out as well. I think that episode's going to be recorded on Wednesday, come out on Thursday, I believe. And then we have some future podcasts hopefully coming up, future ideas that we have this summer, so be on the lookout for that. And I think that's it. Also subscribe to Field of 68, follow Field of 68. There are presenting sponsors as far as, just giving us a platform to be able to talk Alabama basketball. So, thank you to them. And I don't think I missed anything now after.
Good. You got it now.
Yeah. Also, I didn't get it now. Tide Hoops History, Michael Southern. Be sure to follow them. I think we're going to have a Tide Hoops History podcast come out this summer. So be on the lookout for that. Follow them. Michael does a great job. So with that, now we can say Roll Tide. Now we can sign off, and I will talk to you guys again soon. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.